Nobody plans the night they leave their family forever. You don't pack a bag for it. You don't rehearse a speech. You just reach the end of something, and you walk. My name is Wesley Morgan. On the night of September 14th, 2015, I turned 25 years old in an empty backyard in Columbus, Ohio, standing next to a folding table covered in food nobody was going to eat, watching the last of my friend's taillights disappear down Granville Road. My parents had left 2 hours before the party was scheduled to start. My sister Amber had called. There was an emergency. There was always an emergency. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because this story doesn't make sense without the pattern. And the pattern is the whole point. I grew up in a 3-bedroom ranch house on Granville Road, in the Barrack neighborhood on Columbus's east side, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows which houses have dogs and which ones have the good Halloween candy. My parents, Ray and Donna Morgan, had lived in that house since 1984. Ray was a fleet maintenance supervisor at the Columbus Division of Refuse Collection, a city job he'd held for 22 years. Donna worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a small dental office on Livingston Avenue for most of my childhood, before retiring early to, as she put it, focus on the family. She was 52 at the time of the story. Ray was 54. I was their second child. Amber was 4 years older than me, 29 to my 25, on the night everything ended. If you're waiting for me to say Amber had a difficult childhood, or a medical history that explains what she became, I'll save you the time. She didn't. Amber was healthy, intelligent, and had a talent for catastrophe that I believe, to this day, was entirely voluntary. The pattern started when I was in high school. Amber was at Ohio State. Whenever something was happening for me, a school play I had a lead in, a wrestling tournament that mattered, my high school graduation dinner, Amber would surface with a crisis. Car trouble, a breakup, a friendship falling apart, a fight with a roommate. Each one was delivered to our parents at the exact moment it would do the most damage to whatever I had going on, with the exact emotional intensity required to ensure they dropped everything and went to her. My parents are not bad people, I want to be clear about that, because this story is easier to tell and easier to hear if you understand that the villain isn't malice. It's a pattern that good people fall into when one child learns to demand and another learns to wait. Ray and Donna had spent years teaching me, without ever saying a word, that my needs were the flexible ones. That I was the one who could handle it, that Amber needed them more. And for years I believed them, because I was their son and I wanted to. The 25th birthday wasn't the first time they'd canceled on me. It was the 4th time in 4 years. At 22, they'd missed my college graduation dinner at Schmidt's Sausage House on Cosset Street, a Columbus institution. The kind of place you book weeks in advance for a reason, because Amber called in tears from her apartment saying she thought she might be having a breakdown. They drove to her. I sat at a table for 6 with 3 empty chairs and tried to explain to the waiter that we'd need to cancel 2 of the entrees. At 23, my birthday dinner was rescheduled twice and then quietly abandoned when Amber's car broke down on I-70 and required both parents to drive out and wait with her for a tow truck for 4 hours. Not AAA, not a tow truck called while she waited inside somewhere warm. Both parents, in person, for a flat tire. At 24, my birthday fell on the same weekend Amber decided to announce she was moving out of her apartment and needed help. Immediately, that weekend, not the following one. And my parents spent my birthday loading a U-Haul on the north side of Columbus while I ate dinner alone at a place called the Guild House on West Broad Street, and told the server it was my birthday, because he asked, and then deeply regretted telling him because he brought a dessert with a candle and the table next to me applauded. That memory still makes me cringe. The lone applause, the strangers smiling at the man eating birthday cake alone. By the time September 2015 arrived, I had learned to keep my expectations calibrated. I had organized the party myself. 30 people, a backyard setup on Granville Road, a cooler full of beer and a grill I'd borrowed from my neighbor Phil. I had not asked my parents to do anything except show up at 6 o'clock. Just show up. That was the whole ask. Amber called at 4:45. I was in the kitchen cutting limes when I heard my mother's voice change in the living room. That particular shift, from normal conversation to the soft, urgent register of a woman managing a crisis, was a sound I had been hearing my entire life and could identify with the accuracy of a smoke detector. I walked to the doorway. Donna was on the phone, hand pressed to her sternum the way she did when she was genuinely worried. Ray was already standing up, keys in hand, reading his wife's face. "What happened?" I asked. Donna held up one finger, the universal signal for not now, and kept talking into the phone. Ray looked at me. He had the expression of a man who knows what he's about to do and knows it's wrong and is going to do it anyway. "It's Amber. She says she's not doing well. She sounds bad, Wes." "She sounds bad," I repeated. "She's alone over there. She has a phone. She can call a friend. She can call a hotline. She can call the non-emergency medical line." My voice was level. "She can do any of those things. You don't have to go. Wesley, my party starts in an hour and 15 minutes. "I know." He said it quietly, with genuine regret, and in that moment I believed the regret was real. "I know, son. But she's your sister." Donna came off the phone. "We're going to go check on her. We won't be long. You'll be gone all night." She flinched. "That's not fair." "Which part?" I asked. "The prediction or the birthday?" Neither of them had an answer. They were out the door by 5. The party happened without them. 30 people showed up, and I want to be clear, it was a good party. My friends are good people. My college roommate Derek brought a playlist and kept the energy up. My friend Jenna from work brought a cake she'd made from scratch with chocolate buttercream frosting. People laughed. The grill was busy until 9. Nobody mentioned my parents' absence out loud, which is the particular kindness of people who know you well enough to know what you don't need said. But I knew, and they knew I knew. By 10:30, the last guests had gone. I cleaned up alone. I folded the tables. I hauled the cooler back to the garage. I threw away the leftover food and washed the serving dishes and stood at the kitchen sink looking out at the empty backyard. My phone had 4 texts from my mother, updates from Amber's apartment, each one designed to communicate how serious the situation was. She was really struggling tonight. I'm glad we came. She needed us. Not a single word about my birthday. No happy birthday. No how did it go. Nothing. I stood at that kitchen sink for a long time, and somewhere in that silence, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just settled, like a decision that had been forming for years finally finding its shape. I dried my hands. I went to my room. I packed a bag. Not everything, just enough. 2 weeks worth of clothes, my laptop, my documents, birth certificate, social security card, the folder of things you need when you're starting over. I had $2,400 in my checking account and a standing job offer from a logistics company in Cincinnati I'd been sitting on for 3 weeks, unable to decide. I decided. I left a note on the kitchen table. It said, "I'm not angry. I'm just done waiting. Don't look for me right away. I need time. Wes." I drove out of Columbus at 11:47 p.m. on September 14th, 2015, the night of my 25th birthday. I didn't know it yet, but it would be 9 years before I sat at a table with my parents again. Cincinnati is 80 miles from Columbus on I-71 South. I was there in under 90 minutes. I had called ahead about the job, a logistics coordinator role at a mid-size freight company called Hargrove Distribution on Reading Road in the Norwood neighborhood, and started the following Monday, September 21st, 2015. I rented a room in a shared house on Marburg Avenue in Hyde Park, a quiet, established neighborhood of brick streets and mature trees on the east side of Cincinnati. From a 40-year-old nurse named Carol, who had 2 other housemates and a strict no-drama policy that I found genuinely refreshing. I told Carol I was starting over. She handed me a key and told me the recycling went out on Thursdays. I did not call my parents for 6 weeks. When I finally did, on a Sunday evening in late October, the conversation was short and careful. My mother cried. My father asked if I was okay. I told them I was fine, that I had a job and an address, and that I needed them to understand something. I was not coming back to the dynamic we'd had. I wasn't asking for an apology yet. I was asking for distance while I figured out what, if anything, our relationship could look like going forward. My mother said, "This is because of Amber. This is because of a pattern." I told her, "Amber is part of it. So are you and Dad. I'll talk more when I'm ready. I hung up. I went back to my room on Marburg Avenue. I made tea and sat at the small desk by the window and listened to the neighborhood. The sound of Hyde Park on a Sunday evening, quiet and unhurried, entirely unrelated to anything that had happened on Granville Road. I didn't know it yet, but the version of Amber's emergencies that my parents had been seeing and the version that was actually happening were two very different things, and it would take 3 more years before anyone in my family admitted the difference out loud. Building a life from scratch at 25 is both harder and simpler than people tell you. Harder because you're doing it alone. Simpler because nobody is canceling your plans. The first year in Cincinnati was about stability. The job at Hargrove Distribution was entry-level, coordinating freight schedules, managing carrier communications, tracking shipments across a 6-state corridor. It was not glamorous. It was organized, logical, and completely absorbing in the way that useful work always is. My supervisor, a 44-year-old former truck driver named Gary Sutton, had the management style of a man who had driven through enough bad weather to stop wasting time on things that didn't matter. He told me in my first week, "Show up on time, don't make the same mistake twice, and tell me when something's wrong before it becomes my problem." That's the whole job. I showed up on time every day for 4 years. By early 2016, I had moved out of Carol's house on Marburg Avenue and into a 1-bedroom apartment on Erie Avenue in Hyde Park. A pre-war building with good bones, tall windows, and a landlord named Stewart who fixed things the same week you reported them, which I had come to understand was genuinely rare. I bought furniture. Not much. A bed, a couch, a kitchen table for 2 that I mostly used for 1. But mine. I called my parents once a month. The calls were short. 15 minutes. No more. I asked about their health. I did not ask about Amber. They, to their credit, stopped volunteering information about Amber after the 3rd call, when I'd responded to an update about her latest situation with a silence so complete that my mother had audibly recalibrated. Amber herself called me twice in 2016. I let both calls go to voicemail. The messages were long and emotional, and contained in each case both an apology and a request. The apology was for general unspecified behavior in the past, and the request was for my mailing address, or my email, or just a conversation, just once. She missed her brother. I didn't respond to either one. I want to be honest about what that felt like, because I think people expect it to feel powerful. It didn't. It felt like holding something very heavy in very still hands. In the spring of 2017, something happened that changed my understanding of the whole picture. I had stayed in loose contact with a family friend, a woman named Barbara Holt, who had lived 3 houses down from us on Granville Road for as long as I could remember. Barbara was 63, a retired high school counselor, and the kind of person who noticed things other people walked past. She had watched me grow up. She had been at the parties Amber disrupted. She had, I learned later, formed opinions she'd kept carefully to herself for years. Barbara found my email address through an old mutual contact and wrote me a message in March 2017. She said she'd been thinking about me since I left Columbus, and that she wanted to share something, not to stir things up, but because she believed I deserved to know. She told me that in the year since I'd left, she had spoken several times with my mother, Donna, and that Donna had confided something that Barbara felt crossed from private family matter into something I should hear. Amber had never been in crisis on those nights. Not the night of my 25th birthday, not the graduation dinner, not the birthday dinner reschedules. Barbara had sat with my mother over coffee on 3 separate occasions in late 2015 and 2016 and listened to Donna slowly, haltingly, begin to acknowledge something she'd been refusing to look at directly, that Amber had manufactured the emergencies. That Donna had known, at some level, for years, that she had gone anyway, every time, because saying no to Amber's distress, real or performed, felt more immediately impossible than saying no to me, because I never fell apart when they let me down. That was the whole equation. That was the entire thing. I was the one who didn't fall apart, so I was the one who got left. I sat with Barbara's email for 3 days before I responded. When I did, I thanked her. I told her I wasn't surprised. Exactly. more that hearing it confirmed something I'd felt in my bones for 15 years but had never been able to prove. I asked her one question. Did my father know? She wrote back within an hour. Ray knows. He's known longer than your mother has admitted it. I think that's the harder part for him. I want to pause here and talk about something this story is really about, because underneath the birthdays and the canceled dinners and the 9 years of distance, there is a psychological dynamic that plays out in families all over the country. And it has a name. It's called the parentified child, or, in its sibling relationship equivalent, the invisible child. It's what happens when one child in a family learns, through repeated experience, that their emotional needs are the negotiable ones, that they are strong and therefore don't require the same management. That being low maintenance is not a compliment but a sentence. The other child, in this case Amber, learns the opposite lesson. That distress, whether real or performed, is a reliable currency for attention and resource. Neither child consciously chooses this. It gets built, brick by brick, through thousands of small moments where parents make the easier choice in the short term without seeing the cost in the long term. My parents were not cruel. They were conflict avoiders who had been slowly trained by one daughter's escalating demands and one son's learned silence. The tragedy isn't malice. It's the pattern that good, loving people fall into when nobody stops to audit what they're actually doing. Barbara's email gave me language for something I'd felt my whole life. That language mattered more than I expected. By 2019, 4 years after leaving Columbus, I had been promoted twice at Hargrove Distribution. I was now a regional operations manager, overseeing freight coordination across Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. I had a team of 6. I had a salary that made my 25-year-old self's $2,400 checking account look like a down payment on a lesson. I had also, somewhere in those 4 years, become a person I recognized. Not just a person in reaction to my family, not just the kid who left, but someone with a life that was entirely, unambiguously his own. I had a group of close friends in Cincinnati. Derek, who'd moved from Columbus in 2017 for a job at a tech startup in Blue Ash, and a handful of people I'd met through a recreational soccer league at Lunken Athletic Complex out on Kellogg Avenue. I had a routine I liked, a neighborhood I knew, a city that had no memory of me as anyone's overlooked son. My calls with my parents had lengthened gradually. By 2019, they were 30 minutes, sometimes 40. My father and I had found our way back to something easier. He'd ask about work, I'd ask about his garden. We'd talk about the Bengals with the weary affection of two men who had chosen suffering as a sports loyalty. We had not, in 4 years, discussed Amber's fake emergencies directly. We had arrived at an unspoken détente. I would remain in their lives, carefully, at a distance, and the subject of what had happened would not be opened until someone was ready to open it fully. I didn't know it yet, but someone was about to be ready. In October 2019, my father called me on a Tuesday morning. Not a Sunday, not our regular call window, and when I picked up and heard his voice, I knew immediately that something had shifted. "Can I come see you?" Ray asked. No preamble. Just me. "I'll drive down Saturday. I need to talk to you in person, Wes. It's time." He drove down on Saturday, October 19th, 2019. I met him at a diner called The Echo on Madison Road in Hyde Park. A neighborhood institution, the kind of place with red vinyl booths and coffee that comes in a bottomless ceramic mug and nobody rushes you. We ordered eggs. We drank too much coffee. And my father, Ray Morgan, fleet maintenance supervisor, City of Columbus, 26 years of service, a man who expressed love primarily through showing up and fixing things, looked at me across a diner booth in Cincinnati and told me the truth. "I knew what Amber was doing," he said. "Not every time, but most times." He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. "I told myself it was easier to go to her, that you'd be fine, that you were always fine." His jaw tightened. I told myself that so many times I started to believe it was a compliment. The diner was warm and quiet around us. A couple in the next booth was sharing a newspaper. Someone's toast popped up at the counter. "I let you down, not just that night. A lot of nights." He looked up. "I don't expect you to say it's okay. I just needed you to hear me say it wasn't." I had been waiting for those words, in one form or another, for 9 years. And when they came, they didn't feel like victory. They felt like grief, like finally being allowed to grieve something I'd been holding at arm's length. I didn't say it was okay. I told him I heard him. I told him it mattered that he'd said it. And then I told him what I'd needed him to understand for 9 years. That I hadn't left because I hated them. I'd left because I loved myself enough to stop participating in something that was slowly erasing me. He nodded. He stared at his coffee. He said, "That's fair." We sat in that diner for 2 hours. We didn't solve everything. You don't solve 20 years of family dynamics over eggs and bottomless coffee on a Saturday in Hyde Park. But something moved. Something that had been locked shifted in its frame. I drove him back to his car. And we stood on the sidewalk on Madison Road in the October afternoon, and he hugged me. The kind of hug that Ray Morgan didn't give easily. Short and tight and meaning more than a longer one would have. "I'll work on your mother," he said. "She's getting there. She's just slower." "I know." I told him. "I'm not going anywhere." There's a version of this story that ends with a dramatic confrontation, shouting, tears, ultimatums, everyone in the same room finally saying the things that needed saying at full volume. That version would be more satisfying to watch. What actually happened was quieter, and I think it was better. After Ray's visit in October 2019, the calls between us became different. Fuller, more honest. My mother joined the calls more consistently, and while Donna and I moved toward each other more slowly than Ray and I had, we moved. She was 56 by then, and there was something in her voice, a tiredness, not the dramatic kind, but the kind that comes from carrying a version of events that no longer held up, that told me she was doing her own accounting. Amber, meanwhile, had been doing the most important thing she could have done for my eventual return to the family. She had been dismantling herself, slowly and publicly, in ways that were impossible for my parents to explain away. In 2018, Amber had borrowed $4,000 from Ray and Donna for a car repair, she said. The car, as it turned out, had been repossessed 8 months earlier. The money went somewhere else. Ray found out in early 2019 when a collections notice for the original car loan showed up at the Granville Roadhouse because Amber had still been using it as her address. In early 2020, Amber called my parents in the middle of the night from a bar in Gahanna, a suburb northeast of Columbus, saying she'd been stranded. Ray drove out. When he got there, Amber was not stranded. She was fine. She was, by Ray's account, surprised to see him. She had apparently called both her parents and 2 friends and gone with whoever arrived first, and my father, who had driven 40 minutes in January at 2 in the morning, was not the one she'd been hoping for. He drove home alone. He called me the next morning, which is how I know about it. He didn't say anything dramatic. He just said, "I think I'm finally seeing it, Wes." "I know, Dad. I'm sorry it took this long." "Yeah," I told him. "Me too." By 2022, I was 32 years old, 7 years out of Columbus, regional operations manager at Hargrove, recently promoted to director of logistics for the Ohio-Kentucky-Indiana corridor. I had moved from the Erie Avenue apartment into a 2-bedroom house I'd bought on Linwood Avenue in Hyde Park. A 1940s brick colonial with a deep backyard and original hardwood floors that I'd refinished myself over 3 weekends in June. The refinishing floors detail is important. You'll understand why in a moment. My parents had started driving down to Cincinnati twice a year, once in spring, once in fall. We'd have dinner, walk around Hyde Park, go to a Reds game at Great American Ballpark on Joe Nuxhall Way downtown if the timing was right. These visits were comfortable in the way that rebuilt things are comfortable, not frictionless, but genuinely warm, with the earned quality of 2 people who chose to keep showing up after the easy reasons were gone. Amber and I had not spoken since the voicemails in 2016. That changed in April 2023. She called on a Tuesday evening. I answered, not because I was ready necessarily, more because I had decided somewhere in the preceding months that I was tired of the weight of not answering, that I could pick up the phone and listen without it meaning anything I didn't want it to mean. Amber's voice was different from what I remembered, quieter, less performance in it. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me," she started. I answered. I pointed out. A pause. Then, almost despite herself, a short exhale that might have been a laugh. "You did." Another pause. "I've been seeing a therapist. For about 2 years, and she's asked me a lot of questions about you, about us, about the things I did. Her voice steadied itself. I'm not going to list everything. I don't think you need to sit through a list, but I want to say, and I mean this without any expectation attached to it, that what I did to you, the pattern of it, the birthdays, all of it was real. It was deliberate. Not always consciously, but it was a choice I kept making. And you deserved better. No request at the end, no ask. Just the thing itself. I sat with it for a moment. I appreciate you saying that. I don't expect. I know you don't. That's why I'm still on the phone. We talked for 40 minutes. Not a reconciliation. Not yet. Not in one call. But a beginning of something honest, which was more than I had expected to feel with Amber in my lifetime. In September 2024, my parents came down for my 34th birthday. Ray was 63. Donna was 61. They drove down on Friday evening in Ray's truck, and I made dinner. Grilled chicken, corn on the cob, the good coleslaw from the recipe my mother used to make when I was a kid and had asked her to send me years ago. We ate on the back deck of the Linwood Avenue house, the three of us. In the September evening, the backyard was lit with string lights Derek had helped me put up the previous summer. The refinished floors caught the light from inside and glowed through the back door. Donna looked at the house, really looked at it the way you look at a place that has become someone and reveals them. And her eyes got bright. She didn't cry. She was a woman who had done most of her crying privately, I suspected. But her voice was soft when she spoke. You built something real here, Wes. Yeah, I told her. I did. Ray looked at me from across the table. He raised his bottle of beer. No speech. Just that. I raised mine. Here's what I want you to take from this story, because this isn't really about birthdays, and it isn't really about a sister who manufactured crises for attention, and it isn't really about parents who made the easier choice too many times in a row. It's about what happens when you stop waiting for the people who should have chosen you to choose you and start choosing yourself instead. Leaving wasn't a power move. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was a 25-year-old man standing at a kitchen sink at midnight on his birthday, recognizing, finally, that he had been the flexible one his entire life, and that flexible was not the same as okay. That being the one who could handle it was not the same as being the one who didn't need anything. The 9 years were not wasted. I need you to hear that clearly. Every year of those 9 years was mine. Fully mine. I built a career and a neighborhood and a life that nobody could cancel. Nobody could call with a fake emergency and make it stop. It was just mine. And from that foundation, from having something that was fully mine, I could eventually afford to let my family back in. Not because they had earned it back overnight, but because I was no longer dependent on their choices for my sense of self. That's the only way rebuilding works. You have to be whole before you can share the table again. Otherwise, you're just returning to the same arrangement in different clothes. Amber and I talk occasionally now. Carefully, without the weight of unspoken history because the history has been spoken. My parents drive down twice a year. The deck lights go on. There is food and there is warmth. And it is real, not perfect, but real. And real is what I was always asking for. I am 34 years old as I share this. My house on Linwood Avenue has a deep backyard and original hardwood floors I refinished myself. I have a career and a city and a life that belongs to me. And every year, on September 14th, I make my own birthday dinner. I invite the people who showed up. I eat well. And nobody cancels. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you. Genuinely.